started. So thank you for joining us, everybody, here today. This is the first in our Modern Data Ecosystems video series. I'm Elliot Clarkson. I'm VP of Global Marketing at Amplifi. I'm here with Mike, who's our Chief Innovation Officer. Say hello, Mike.
Hello, everyone.
You should have said hello, Mike. We're here today to talk about modern data ecosystems. This is the first in the series. We've got a lot more of these coming up over the next couple of weeks with some of our partners. And the reason we're here is to really talk about what modern data ecosystems are, do some positioning around what we're going to be talking about over the next couple of weeks, and really look at how fast the world of data is accelerating. And why some of the conversations around the approaches to data management are happening. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be joined by partners like Stevo Systems, Denodo, Actian, Pyramid Analytics, Data.World, and Semiki. So there's going to be some really interesting conversations from different technology vendors. But today it's just us, and we just wanted to kind of set the scene. So, Mike, I'll start with modern data ecosystems and what they are. So, there's a lot of talk around modern this and modern that. But what you've been in the world of data for a while. What have you seen change rapidly over the last couple of years that's shifting the conversation?
Well, I think there's I'd probably call on three things actually that have just moved the needle a little bit and just kind of started to make the industry have to think differently. So one of them is really just the sheer amount of data that organizations have potentially got at their disposal today. Like the volume of data in the world is growing exponentially, and there's all these statistics that 90% of the data was created in the last couple of years. It's quite scary the amount of data that is out there, but that brings kind of demand to do something with that data and turn it into something meaningful, and the challenge of doing that at such a massive scale is really quite game changing. I guess the other one, and this is perhaps a little less exciting, but it's just the rise of cloud platforms, and I guess what that's done is take away some of the traditional complexity around standing up infrastructure. So it's enabled organizations to be a bit more agile, to build more kind of composable architectures, composed with lots of different capabilities. And then the third one is the promise that's surrounding and the hype that's surrounding AI and machine learning, and the kind of need for organizations to be doing something about those things and making some use of like advanced techniques to turn into something meaningful for their organization. Those things are like they're not brand new. They haven't just happened in the last 2 years, but they feel like they're at a bit of a tipping point now. And I guess that's leading to new approaches to data and analytics in general, and that's where we start to talk about the data ecosystem.
It's funny, I know you've been quite vocal about the word modern as well. We've just published a blog around this as well. Is that modern doesn't necessarily mean you have to throw out everything you've done over the last 10 years. It just means there's more of a, like when we talk about modern data ecosystems, it's there's different technology that perhaps before it was you either have this or you have this, whereas now it's you can have this and this, and they can work together and they can deliver these, we'll come on to things like, a fabric approach, or if you're doing different approaches to things, it's more about, I guess modern is more about the approach to it rather than the technology itself.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of, I mean, we sometimes talk about it as like ecosystem thinking. It's thinking holistically about how all of the components of your data analytics landscape, and maybe not just your data analytics landscape, it could be also the other businesses that you interact with, how it works together, and how each part plays its role in delivering value to you as an organization. That's what we mean by ecosystem thinking. So it's not about throwing away technology or processes or operating models. It's about thinking more holistically about how it all hangs together.
But it's interesting because we've seen, obviously, our pedigree and our background is obviously things like master data management and PIM and those kind of things. And although they kind of had their big moment in the sun, they're still obviously incredibly important. And obviously we'll talk about this when we have the conversations with Stevo and Semiki and around those kind of things. But Forrest has recently said you can't do data fabric without master data management, which is a good example of even the analysts recognizing and saying, slow down a bit, just remember the foundations and don't fly off too far. which it's good to see that happening. So in terms of the kind of solution, I know we talked there about the ecosystem approach. What types of solutions or approaches are companies now using them? What are you starting to see around things like modern data or things like mesh and fabric and those things?
Yeah, well, maybe we should talk about those approaches first of all. I think the interesting thing is that people have started to formalize approaches that address the whole ecosystem, which is, again, not completely new, but it's certainly got a lot more momentum than it's perhaps had previously. And there's kind of real and tangible definitions behind these kind of approaches to building an ecosystem that are starting to be recognised and more widely adopted. I think, time will tell whether both of those approaches, do end up delivering the value that they promise to deliver. If I were to bet on it, I'd say that they'll evolve and change, but there's some elements of them that will really endure and really deliver value in the long term.
I think it's interesting once you put a name on being a marketing person. Once you put a name on something and a brand on something, it also becomes real as well. So when you say data fabric and that sticks, it's almost like it's a thing you kind of not have to do, but it's a real thing. Then it's not just a kind of how are we doing this? We're doing it this way. That people might have been doing a fabric approach for the last couple of years, but it's not really had a name or it's interesting.
It's right, and I think like data mesh is a really good example of that, where the 4 principles of data mesh, you distill them down. They're not new. None of them are new. They've been going on in pockets, or for years and years. But bringing the 4 of them together, formalizing it into an approach, that's what's new. That's what's kind of making a difference and driving. Again, a lot of hype behind that.
Yeah, no, it's cool. So I've got a question for you then. One of the things that like I said previously, we've traditionally we were started out as an MDM consultancy and PIM, looking at things like product data and customer data, and very siloed all domains that we're looking at in terms of data. How have you seen, and you've obviously been the kind of point of this in your role, but how have you seen us, or what have you seen us as a company, as Amplifi, have to do as a consultancy to evolve and adapt what we offer, whether it's new partnerships or maybe it's helping our clients do things in a different way, like laying the foundations for fabric? What have you seen that's evolved and changed?
Yeah, I think so. I think the thing for me is applying the things that we know and have been doing for many years, and have got a long history of success in, but applying them to different scenarios. And so I guess data governance is a good example where things like mesh are introducing not completely new ways of doing data governance, but different approaches to governance than what we might have traditionally seen. So adapting our frameworks and really challenging ourselves to think about what does governance look like in these kind of modern ecosystems. And in doing that, we've also, and then this probably ties in a bit to the fabric piece as well, we've really expanded our partnership network and really tried to set ourselves on a path working with organizations that can kind of address all aspects of the modern ecosystem. And I think one really important part of that is metadata management, and this ability to kind of to capture, catalog, and monitor all of your metadata, the abundance of metadata that you're creating as an organization, with a view to capitalizing on making use of that information in the future to kind of drive the evolution of your ecosystem. I think that's a really, really powerful thing. Metadata management, not new to us,
no.
But thinking about that ultimate goal of where sort of fabric promises to get you, and adapting the way you do metadata management to prepare for that. That's the kind of thing that we're having to think about as a consultancy.
I've got a free shout out for data.world there for metadata management with the owl on my laptop. And we'll be speaking to them soon. But I think it's interesting, like you say about metadata management, it's not been a new thing for us. There's things like metadata management. There's things like the analytics side of things, or newer practices like data virtualization and the data integration models. A lot of this stuff, like I say, people have been doing data integration for years. People have been trying to do that, metadata management for the last couple of years and do it well. But now it's all kind of, rather than just trying to do that one thing and focusing on that one thing, like we're saying about ecosystems, and I think this is like you were saying about us building our partner network, it's identifying those gaps or those things that people have tried to do as single disciplines and working out, okay, how do you do metadata management and data catalog, but how does that then feed into, well, how does your master data management system feed into that, and all those different, and how your overall governance framework, how does that incorporate all this technology and all these different approaches? And obviously at the heart of that, we're talking a lot about technology in this, but obviously the people and the process around that is always, and has always been for us and will always be, probably the biggest part of it, right? Technology is the enabler, but the people and the process are the big thing.
Yeah, I think it's probably truer than it's ever been, but it's also, I guess, the role of people and the processes that people are involved in is changing a little bit as well. So if we think about things like data mesh, it's all about how you organize yourselves as an organization, not there is, of course, there's a technology element to it, of course there's a platform element to it, but it's really about where ownership of data sits and how decisions are made about data and who has the power to make decisions about data. That's what changes, and that will be the key to its successful failure, not the what WYSI technology put in for the platform. And I guess the other thing that's really changing, and Gartner talk about, don't forget the humans as a theme of their research, which is talks about, well, in this world where automation's increasingly becoming like an expectation, even in a highly automated world, don't forget the role of the human. So if you're dealing with if you're dealing with AI automating things, you still need to be steering it in the right direction. You still need to be asking it the right questions, etc. So I think the role of people is potentially changing and will change probably drastically in the coming years. But people are as important now as they've ever been, and actually not more so.
And I think to your point earlier as well, it's like people have been doing, companies have been doing these things for years as well. Is the other thing with these new approaches, I think sometimes people can get, again, working in the marketing world and also working in the data world, people can get distracted by the next big thing, like ChatGPT comes out, all of a sudden that's all everyone's talking about, or the next thing comes out and it's all everyone's talking about. And actually to build a sustainable, data framework, whatever it is, that's going to work now and work in 2 years and in 3 years and in 10 years, you have to remember the people in that, because the technology will advance, everything else will, but you still have to have those people making sure there's a solid strategy. You have to make sure there's people knowing why you're doing what you're doing as well, right? And what is the objective, what end result are you trying to get from it, not just let's get a data catalog because it's the thing we have to do, right?
It's really, really tempting, like especially when you hear words like mesh and fabric and see all the hype about them when you go to industry events and whatever, everyone's talking about them. To think, right, okay, I'm going to pursue this new thing now, and I'm not going to do MDM, or I'm not going to do a data governance initiative or whatever, and forget that actually those are foundational capabilities that you need to have. Most organizations, it's an almost an accepted thing that those are foundational capabilities that need to be there. And if you don't have maturity there, you're probably going to struggle to adopt some of these newer approaches. So I do think like it's great to kind of take advantage of like new thinking and new approaches, but you can't just forget about the stuff that you've been doing for years. It's not throw everything out and start again.
No. And I think that's clear, and I think it's we're seeing that with conversations we're having with our customers. We've got customers we work with for 5, 6, 7 years, and we're still working with them, and the projects we were working on with them 2 or 3 years ago are still showing value and showing results now, and that's going to be the same. Mesh and fabric, it's not like you implement mesh, a mesh approach, and all of a sudden you're doing it tomorrow and it solves all your problems overnight and it's done. It's going to be a long-term thing, right? So it's cool. So I think that's. Is there anything else you want to add? I can't think if there's anything else to add to that in terms of what we're talking about over the next couple of weeks and what modern data ecosystems are. I suppose, like I said, we've talked about people and process. Over the next couple of weeks, like I said, we're going to be talking to a number of our partners around this as well. So like we're going to have next week, we'll be talking to Stibo Systems about the role that MDM plays in the modern data ecosystem, how MDM plays in things like data fabric. We're going to be talking to Semeki around a similar thing around data management and those kind of things. We've got Denodo lined up to talk about data virtualization and the rise that's having in data integration and data management. We've got Actian talking about cloud data platforms. We've got Pyramid talking about analytics and AI, and we've got Data.world talking about data catalog and metadata management. We've got some really cool conversations coming up. And I think it'd be really interesting to see, how we're obviously talking about all those individual elements and how they work in the modern data ecosystem. But hopefully over the next couple of weeks, what you get is a picture of how all those approaches kind of knit together. Or again, I suppose it comes back to that whole point of it depends on what you're trying to do and what your requirements are as to where those bits kind of piece into it. But
it's definitely the worst thing anyone can do is pursue a particular approach or buzzword without any reason for why they're doing it, right? That's the route to failure, the number one route to failure for any industry.
No. And I'd probably say that's probably coming back to the question about, what have we evolved and adapted? I would say probably the biggest thing we've evolved and adapted is, again, we've done data strategy for years, but actually having our established data strategy practice and having frameworks signed, recently becoming an authorized DCAM partner, and obviously looking at their cloud data management side of things as well, is having these frameworks to kind of sit down with these huge enterprises or, SME sized businesses and say, what is your data strategy? Or if you don't have one, we've got frameworks now, we can build them for you. That's probably, to me, one of the biggest developments we've had, is being able to actually take stock with companies and say, where are you trying to get to? And use us in the best way possible, which is, we can help you get there. We can help you become self-sufficient. We can help you become competent in these practices. But we're the data experts who can help you get there. But you need to have a map first before you set off on the journey.
I think the great thing about those as well is that they do look holistically across the range of capabilities that you need to have, and kind of accept that you might be brilliant over here, but if you're not also brilliant over here, you're probably not going to get as much value out of the entire thing as you need to get. So I think they're really, really powerful tools.
Good, fantastic. Well, thank you for today. Like I say, we've got some great stuff coming up. So they're not every week, we've got them spaced out, and we'll add them to LinkedIn as we go. So please do tune in. If you have any questions, drop us a direct message on LinkedIn. If you any topics you want to cover on any of it, please let us know. But thank you for tuning in today. Mike, thank you for your time and your expertise as always. Mike will be a permanent fixture on these as well. So we'll be talking to subject matter experts from partners. It'll be me and Mike in conversation with them. So you'll have some familiar faces on there. But thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.